Episode 77. The rebuild is complete. I'll finally stop talking about it. My friend Joe went on a Dolly Parton diet. How did it work out for him? It really made Jolene. Yeah, I know. What could I say? All right, sit back, relax, shut the hell up. The 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast is about to begin. Hello, welcome to the 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast. I'm your host, Nikki G. I'm here to inform, entertain, and delight your ear holes with everything off-road for the next 10 minutes or so. Why 10 minutes? Well, that's about how long it's going to take for my Amazon order to get here. That Prime really pays off. Want to remind everybody you can listen to the 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Overcast, Breaker, CastBox, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and Stitcher, but never iHeartRadio or Pandora. Why? Because they're snobs. Want to reach out and touch the 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast? We'd really appreciate that, or I'd say I would really appreciate that. Any kind of contact would be better than no contact. At least that's what I keep telling my wife. But this is not that kind of podcast. You can contact the 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast at 10minuteoffroad@gmail.com. That's 10minuteoffroad@gmail.com. And I promise I'll probably answer it, maybe, if I ever did get an email. I might have an email. I should check it. Or you can leave a comment on our YouTube video. That's probably the easiest and fastest way to leave a comment for the 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast, because I spend a lot of time on YouTube. That's how I get my learning. You can follow the 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast and be ignored by the 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast on all the popular social media outlets, such as Instagram and Facebook. Let's face it, that's it. Because, Twitter is too politically charged for me, and I don't think 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast has a base, or let's say clientele, followership on Twitter. I might if I tried it, who knows. And YouTube, like I said earlier, I'm always on YouTube. You can catch me on YouTube, but never on TikTok. I refuse to be on TikTok. I've always thought it was kind of weird and strange, and now with all the media attention it's getting with the Chinese people and whatnot, yeah, TikTok ain't for me. Let's face it. If I was a 23-year-old girl twerking, I'd be all over TikTok. But I'm not. I'm a fat, middle-aged man, and there should be a TikTok equivalent for a fat, middle-aged man. But what can we call it? I don't know. Again, this ain't that kind of podcast. Recently signed up for Rumble. So we'll see how that pans out. I've been slowly and surely putting some videos on Rumble, along with my first few. I've created a 10-Minute Off-Road Podcast channel on Rumble, as well as my Nick G, Jeep and Nick Jeep videos. But I gotta tell you, Rumble is not really panning out. It's starting to take off. And they've got a fight ahead of them if they're going to try to go head-to-head with YouTube. Well, a lot of people are fed up with YouTube and going to Rumble. I know I had a little bit of bout with YouTube over some copyright infringement, and that's about that. So let's get on track now that we have all that legal mumbo-jumbo out of the way. I just about wasted half my airtime, which is great. Well, which I won't say which is great, but I want to talk about the rebuild of my engine for the last and final time. I'll probably mention it again in the future because I'm very excited about it. Had new engines before, had rebuilt engines before, but this one I'm just flipping out, ecstatic over. I finally got it all done. Didn't have any problems putting it in. I did have a hard time mating the transmission up to the engine. Just mainly I just didn't have the strength to do it. I used to do this stuff all the time as a kid. No problem. Used to do it on a weekend. I could not get this transmission bolted up. I had to call and enlisted a friend. Shout out to Frankie. He came over with his ox-like strength and held the transmission and I kind of wiggled it in place, and boom, it's in. Took us 15 minutes. I wrestled with the transmission for a day and a half. We nailed it in 15 minutes, and then we just spent the time BSing, rest of the time BSing about Jeeps, and did a little tinkering on his. But it's all bolted up. I'm ecstatic. Got the Jeep all put back together. Turned the key. It fired right up. I thought I would have to fight with the getting fuel into it. I thought I would have to hit it with some starter fluid or something. Nope. Fired right up. Purred like a kitten right off the line. I thought maybe the computer had to do some relearning of some sensors, which is, I'm sure it's doing. But it just fired right up and fell right into place. I was very happy with it. Let it sit idle in the driveway for about 15-20 minutes, shut it off. That's what the guy who rebuilt my engine told me to do. And I've never heard this before, and nobody else has ever heard it. But he told me, start it up, get it up to operating temperature for about 10-15 minutes, and shut it off, and don't start it back up for a day to let the cam harden. Didn't make sense to me. I figured the cam was already hardened when it came from wherever the factory that milled it. But I said, hey, what the heck? I took his advice. Started it up and ran it for a few minutes, 15 minutes, shut it off. And then while the engine was just cooling down and stuff, I was putting my front clip back on and all the little bits and pieces and tidying things up. Next day, fired it up, drove it to the store, drove it around town a little bit. It's running great. I am having a little bit of my heating issue back again on this engine. I've noticed that it was running right at operating temperature, where my other engine, as worn out at what it was running on the cool side of 210, and this is on the warm side of 210. Not too bad. When I turned the air conditioner on, the temperature went up a little bit. Not really concerned about it on the road, but on the trail, you know, this thing, it runs a little hotter on the trail. But I did put my thermostat in, and I usually run without a thermostat in the summer. So I might take my thermostat out and try it. And I didn't fill it with coolant. I filled it with distilled water, because I figured I might have to take something apart. I didn't want to waste the $12 on glycol. So I just filled it with water. So that might have something to do with it too. And I did flush out my radiator, but I should have put a new one in. Now, in hindsight, that was the perfect time to do it. But radiator's easy enough to change. I could do that in the driveway in an hour. So I might go new radiator, but like I said, everything I have now was in my old Jeep, and it was running pretty good. So I'm going to take the thermostat out and put some glycol in it and see if that solves it. If not, then I'll investigate further. I don't think it's an engine problem, although with the engine being tight and everything, it might be producing a little bit more heat. But I'll figure it out. I'll get to the bottom. I've done that dance before. I'm familiar with it. Along with the cam hardening process, the guy who built the engine for me told me to break it in, drive it 250 miles around town, just puttering, a lot of idling, no hard takeoffs or no stomping on it. Which, if you know me, I don't drive like that anyhow. And then he said after that, 250 miles on the highway. And then change the oil, and it's good to go. He did recommend that I put Valvoline VR1 oil, racing oil in it, because it has zinc in it. And then he told me to add a extra can of zinc additive to it. The flat tappet cam needs it. And so I took his word for it, and I did it. And reading the oil bottle, it says not for road use. It'll damage your catalytic converter. But the good thing is I don't have a catalytic converter anymore. So I went ahead, I did it. It made sense. I've always heard that these engines need zinc, and I never really paid attention to it. But I'm going to make sure I put zinc in this one. My other engine, my other XJ, I haven't put a lick of zinc in it. We'll see how it goes. I'm pretty sure my old engine, I didn't put a lick of zinc in it. I'm not sure who the previous owner did or not, but I'm pretty sure they probably didn't. So without zinc, I got 280 something, almost 300,000 miles on it. We'll see how it does. But yeah, I'm a believer in zinc. I'm going to put zinc in it, and we'll see how it goes. I'll do a comparison. I'll have an engine without zinc and an engine with zinc. All right, so I've always withheld the name of the shop because I didn't want to endorse them if they didn't do a good job. But through the whole process, the guy gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling. We were in constant contact with each other. He called me about every little thing, and I appreciate it. It was great. He was very friendly, very upfront. I had total faith and trust in him. And now that it's all over with, I'm going to tell you, it was Sellers Machine Shop on Old Mount Holly Road in Charlotte, North Carolina. Highly recommend him. Excellent guy. Did excellent work. He had it done when he said he would have it done. And it was a little over budget, but we ran into a few problems, especially with the crank. He had to source a new crank, and trying to find a new crank for a 20-year-old engine was kind of hard. He did tell me there was a couple of different cranks. They varied by year, and so he called me to make sure that my engine was the original engine in it, and he had matched, I guess, the casting number on the block and stuff. But he had a hard time tracking down the exact crankshaft. And since he got it, I can't complain. The engine started and the transmission bolted up to it, so it's all good and done. So now that it's done, it is killing me that I am ready to hit the trails. The Jeep is running. My gear, I don't know how many times I've cleaned and organized my gear. I'm ready. But I want to do the engine break-in before I take it. So it's still going to be about another week. I plan on for this week driving the hell out of the Jeep to get my 500 miles so I can change the oil. Although hitting the trail probably wouldn't hurt it. But yeah, I still want to drive around town to make sure everything's all right. We have a loop around our city called the 485 Outer Loop that, according to Gaia, is 85 miles. And then according to Wikipedia, it's 66 miles around the loop. So I could take that loop and I'll probably never be more than about 25 miles from home. So I could always, if something happens, I can just tow it home, or more than likely tow it to a shop, because this is my last engine swap. Well, I'm not going to do this again. It was so hard on me. Well, that's a podcast for another time, I guess. I'm quickly running out of time. Wrap it up. Jeep's running great. Sellers Machine Shop did an awesome job. I'm ready to go. I'm dying to go. And until next time, this is Nicky G saying, wheel what you got and be happy.